And welcome again to another roll of 24 for the week of 20 April to 26 April 2026. In this week's roll of 24, we basically only have four different subjects that are going to be presented. One of them is where Charlie and I went out camping, and the purpose behind that camping was to do some light painting. So, not sure how well this is coming through, but we did some light painting early in the morning and also took some landscapes of a sunrise. And we're coming near the end of spring down here in central Texas. And so I spent a little bit of time out capturing some flowers out at a place called the Wildlife Management Area out by Stillhouse Lake. Charlie and I spent a couple hours out there. He got to run loose off his collar or off his leash out there in that area while I was busy taking photographs. So out there at Meridian State Park, where Charlie and I were doing some light painting, and I'll explain later what we were trying to capture. Well, capture was the Milky Way and then a comet that was coming through, and most of those images out there at the lake were taken with this, the RF 15 to 35 by Canon. And the camera actually used throughout this whole week was the Canon R5 Mark II. Not sure why I didn't use the R5 or the R6 Mark II, but I ended up just using the R5 Mark II for all the images this week. So as I just mentioned, out there at the Meridian State Park, this is on the west side of the lake. It's 87 acres. And once again, this is the purposeful picture for the week. And once again, these are inside the camera lens bags. And so I pull them out, and I came up with that list out of a book of about 150 different things. And so I made two different lists for two different bags. And so this was light painting. And I've never done light painting other than once I lit up a car at 3 o'clock in the morning to see how it turned out, and it turned out horrible. So this was my attempt at light painting. I had purchased basically a $40 light. Pretty cool, and it had a string. And this is me walking into and out of the scene out there at the lake. And as you saw, this is at 5 o'clock in the morning. And the prior picture was 361 seconds. And same with this one. This image is 361 seconds. And this was my second attempt. So I went back and checked the image from the first time. I really liked how it turned out. So I had one in the bag, as they say. And so I went back out, reset the bulb timer, and walked out and walked about 15 further feet to the left. So I would be walking into the scene. And this time, so this is the watchman on patrol. So I'm walking down, went out onto the little dock, turned around, came back out, and slowly walked out of the image over onto the right-hand side. And so it was pretty interesting. And as you can see, the sky is starting to lighten up because now it's 5:09 in the morning, even though sunrise is really not until 6 o'clock, 6:30. And so while this is probably the most chaotic of all the pictures, it was, to me, is really the coolest one in a sense. I call this the Demon Watchman Greeting the Dawn. And what this is a chem light. Those lights you crack in half and then shake them up. And I had this on the end of a fishing pole with some line out there. And so I was literally casting this line left and right, which you can see. And if you look close up at the 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock position, you can see very faintly, if you pause the video, you can see them, the line going through the air. And then at the end, I'm doing pretty good, happy with myself. And then all of a sudden, I start reeling it in, and it gets all tangled up. And so I got frustrated. And so the blob on the right-hand side of the dock and then the center blob, that's actually me getting frustrated with the tangled up line. So this image right here is 541 seconds long. Once again, I'm using the bulb timer on the R5. And I had switched out that red chem light for a green or yellow chem light. And got the fishing pole, fishing line all untangled, which was real fun doing at 5 o'clock in the morning. As you see, the prior image was done at 5:33 in the morning. Now it's 6:06 in the morning. So it took me a few minutes there to go back to the picnic table, turn on a light in the dark, and figure out how to untangle all the wire or the line, and then set up this new one. And Charlie just had a field day, and some of the picks and pulls and twists in there is because Charlie was chasing the chem light as I was reeling it in through the water and stuff. So kind of frustrating, but comical in the end. So once again, it was 6 o'clock, 6:06 when I did that last image, and I tried a couple more images, but it was just getting too light. Dawn was breaking, and at first I didn't think anything would come of it. The clouds were really thick, and I didn't think that the sun would be peeking through at all. And so I actually sat down and went and brewed up some coffee, and Charlie was still running around. Well, he was kind of tuckered out after almost 3 hours chasing me in the dark. But so sitting there, still had the camera all set up and everything, and then looked over my shoulder, and I'm like, what? Oh, that's so pretty. And so I switched over and did some exposure bracketing. So I did 7 images. I threw out the first and last images, too light, too dark. And then I did this HDR blend and then some other adjustments in Lightroom. So that sun peeking through, that only lasted a few minutes, if even that. And so the sunrise was at 6:54 where I got those. And then just a few minutes later, the clouds moved over, blocked the sun out. And what I do like, though, is how the light was reflecting through that center hole. And so if you look down at the end of the dock, to me it looks like a whirlpool. And that's created from the swirling clouds from above. And you can see over to the 11 o'clock position, the yellow from the sun still peeking out as it's rising up. But once again, this image, I just really liked how the swirling clouds created a swirling whirlpool in the water at the end of the dock. And to me, that was pretty captivating. So everything was done. Charlie and I got up at 3:30. We went out. We were going to do some astro using the C-Star 50 telescope that we brought out with us. And we were going to shoot some Milky Way. And as you just saw in the prior images, just nothing but cloud cover. And we were also going to try and capture a comet that was supposed to be coming through between 5 and 5:30 on its way through our solar system. But all that stuff failed, and so everything was done. The sunrise was just muddy water and everything else. At the end of the dock, you can still see a little bit of that whirlpool effect. So I set the camera up on interval timer, and I walked out there and took a selfie. I don't put myself in the pictures often enough, I guess. And so I just walked out there and posed and moved around and captured a bunch of images of myself enjoying the calm of the morning. So after I did my selfie and everything else, I had my cup of coffee, went back and hit the record button, just because the lake was perfectly still and the sound of nature were prevalent all around me. So while Charlie had been able to run around I was at campground 31 and 30 was booked, but nobody ever showed up. So while I was out there doing the light painting, I didn't even bother putting Charlie on a leash because the next campground nearest to us was about 500 feet away and around and through some trails. So, anyways, Charlie stayed near me. But after everything was said and done, and now it's almost 10 o'clock, and we were contemplating whether to spend another day out there. We'd booked it for 2 nights, but I sat down outside at the picnic table to look at the weather forecast and call home to see what was going on, and storms were forecasted. And so I went to go get Charlie and found him laying up on a cot, and he'd already crashed, and I think he'd been asleep in there for probably about 15, 20 minutes. And so I had to rustle him up, and he wasn't too happy here. So this is just one of those kind of spur-of-the-moment photographs. I was walking into my office, which is outside in the backyard, and I have these white borders around the door. And just real quick, out of my right eye, I caught movement and a little bitty inchworm. And literally, this thing is about an inch. And so I came into the office, grabbed a camera, and once again, I grabbed the R5 Mark II because I'm shooting this with the 15 to 35 because I didn't want the little guy to run away from me because surprisingly enough, these things move pretty quick. And I took probably about 15 or 20 images. I got 3 of them that were good because I'm not used to the focal range. As you can see, it's 1/1000 and ISO 800 at f2.8. But that little guy, he cruised through that whole 6 inches in about 2 minutes. So while Charlie and I were out there at the Stillhouse Wildlife Management Area, all those pictures, all the flower pictures, will be with the Canon 100 macro f2.8. And once again, I was using the Canon R5 Mark II throughout all these images. So even though you're out in the wilderness wildlife area, it seems like the camera picks up noises from everywhere. Anyways, this video is basically to demonstrate how windy it was and why I ended up having to use a high shutter speed. And then a high shutter speed sometimes corresponding to a high ISO. And I was still using a low f-stop in order to focus in. So these were just 2 of the different plants out there, and I did have some issues about where my focal point was. So these aren't the best videos, but they do show how one has to struggle and learn in this process. So here is that first flower that was in the video, and I did finally capture it, and it was a baby crepe myrtle, maybe all of 2 feet, 2.5 feet, and of course it's thin up on top, so it's blowing around in the wind. But it was just very vibrant, so red and everything else. The sun was hitting it just right. The sun was setting, so you can see I took this around 6:40 in the evening. And once again, yeah, sometimes it's hard because I got Charlie pulling on a leash once in a while. But what was interesting is there was just only this one stem at the very top that was growing up. And I just loved how I was able to capture the detail right there in the center. It's not a seed pod, flower pod before it bloomed, of the colors and everything of this crepe myrtle. And while I've shown this, well, not this image, but a prior image of the false garlic, once again, this is out there at the Stillhouse Wildlife Management Area where Charlie and I were wandering around, and I guess I just got frustrated because I would think that there'd be a whole lot more flowers to photograph out in this area. It's just a huge area, thousands of acres, but we were at an area that's, we were just walking through about 50 acres, but very sparse as far as flowers. So I'm not sure if the deer come in or other wildlife come in and munch on everything. So after the crepe myrtle shot, this was kind of a desperation shot, I guess you could say. It's like, I want to photograph something. But these false garlics, they're getting ready to drop their petals, and probably we won't see them again until next spring. So once again, the flowers are fleeting. So this was just a unique flower. I just loved how the sun was hitting against it. You can see it's 6:51 in the evening, so the sun is setting, and really nice coloring and everything, lighting on this one, because they say lighting's important in photography. And I'm finding that more and more, problem is with all the clouds and everything, it's just a struggle. Went out 2 nights ago and spent 15 minutes waiting for a cloud to move, and all it did was expand. And so I continued my walk, and about 45 minutes later, then it cleared. But as you can see, I did this is 1/2000, so the ISO is up to 3200. And once again, as you saw in the video, the breeze was blowing, and so in order to capture this without any blur, I had to up that speed, which correspondingly ups the ISO. This field matter, Madder, Madder. I hope I said it correctly. Anyways, they just really caught my eye. They're small little flowers on these big green bushes. The flower petals just a little bit bigger than a dime, similar to the false garlic size. They're not very large, and so even with a macro lens, I couldn't even get the pistils in the center sharp because of the wind blowing and everything else. But I just loved how I have this. Once again, try and shoot in odd numbers, they say. So I have 3 on the right and then 2, so it does equal 5, which is an odd number. And so I just loved how the light was hitting these, the green, and then the shadows deep inside the bush. So this was a cute little plant, and I probably walked by it maybe 3 or 4 times, going from one point to another. And it was only when Charlie came over to get a snack from his snack bag that I carry on my waist that, I'm just standing there, and I look down, and that's interesting. That's unique. And so it's called a horse herb. I had to look that up. I had to ask ChatGPT, what is this flower in this image? And that's what it came up with. So the bush probably had about 40 or 50 of them, but the bush was probably about 4 or 5 feet around. So you really had to stop and look in order to really see the flower. One thing I was upset with, or disappointed, I didn't see any bees. There were no bees out there pollinating, and I would really want to try and tackle that task. That's on my list of things to try and capture, is a bee in flight. So this is a 2-leaf senna, and so I probably took maybe 75, 80 photographs of this and another of these flowers. And out of all those, this one, the pistils inside just came out super sharp. And I love how the sun was hitting them at an angle. So you can see this is at 7:45 in the morning. So the sun was still just slowly coming up. I think it rose at 7:30. So Charlie and I were out there early catching the sideways beams. And I just, once again, out of all the images, this was the only one where the pistils and the insides of the flower are just captured in detail. I did a little bit of sharpening and post-processing in Lightroom, but not very much, and not really anything to any of the other sliders inside of Lightroom. This is almost as it came out. So one of the things that's great to have Charlie out there, but look at that. You got your subject right in focus. You're getting everything set up perfectly. And bam! There is now my subject. Charlie decided to come in, and you can still see Charlie playing back there, because I was a little frustrated trying to push him away. Hey, that's my subject I'm trying to photograph. And he thought I wanted to play out in the field. And so I finally had to take him over to the side while the camera was sat there rolling on his tripod, and give him a doggy treat or something so that I could try and get back in there and capture that image. So in that last image, that was at slow motion, and you could see Charlie trying to move in. And so here was another flower, and this time Charlie was probably about 50 feet away from me, and trying to figure out how to focus. So I have a on C3 on my Canon, I have a preset, and unfortunately that preset is for a bright 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and this was earlier in the day, and so as you saw at the very beginning, it started off dark, and then I had to speed it up. But so I'm just trying to get out there and practice in each one of these, and hopefully I'll get better, hopefully, to capture. And once again, you can see, even though it's a slight breeze, it really made taking photographs difficult. And so as you just saw, the flower fluttering in the breeze in the video, and so as I said earlier, I had to ensure that I was at a high rate of speed, and that correspondingly made the high rate of the ISO. But here, before, it was just a clear picture of the pistils. Here, the pistils in the center are not that clear, but once again, I just love how this at 7:46 in the morning, the sun was glinting off of these. And Charlie and I had probably been out there in the field, maybe about 45 minutes, trying to catch everything. So I was able to put my bag down on the ground to actually block some of the wind. And so I only had to use 1/200 and ISO 100. I was using f5.6, and I just wanted the center to be in focus, so you can see the flower on the left is out of focus, and that is by my design. So as you can see, I have this numbered as 16A because just as the top, so I edited the first picture, the full picture, 16B, and then I cropped in to highlight the gills, or whatever those things are called, on top of a mushroom. And there's actually I thought it was this on my computer screen, but it's actually, I think, a hair from Charlie, who was probably all of a foot away from here. Once again, he was just all excited, wanted to see what it is I was trying to do while I was trying to set up the tripod and capture this wild mushroom. ChatGPT said this is a funnel mushroom, but it really couldn't tell because it's not able to analyze wild mushrooms, is what it said. So once again, I had this up on a tripod, F9. I didn't want to do any focus stacking out there in the woods because it's a little uncontrolled. So here is image number 16B, and this is a fennel mushroom according to ChatGPT, their best guess. And so I had the tripod all the way down on the ground, but I was shooting this in portrait mode, so when you add in the bracket, because this is on the R5, and I have the bracket on the left-hand side extended out 1 inch for a handle, and plus I use that so I can feel in the dark which one's my R6 and which one's my R5 Mark II, because based on the brackets. But I just loved how this mushroom showed up. That was the only mushroom in this whole 50 acres that Charlie and I spent three and a half hours wandering around, and almost walked right by it. And as soon as I saw it, I had to grab and coax Charlie away, because if he broke it, there would have been no other opportunity for another image. So this is once out there only. So here I am once again doing some B-roll out there, and you can see it starts off dark because I have the C3 setting for mid-afternoon in Texas. So I'm out there scrambling around, and while the flower's never in focus, you can see that the wind is blowing out there. So in actuality, I took the pictures first this time instead of the video, even though I showed the video first. Because you saw what happened last time. I get set up and everything else, and then Charlie comes bounding over and, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And he rolled over my flower, my subject, last time. So while he was still a good 15, 20 feet away, I got this all set up, and it's now 8:22 in the morning. So the sun is still rising, so I still have some good sideways light coming in on the scene. So once again, I'm only at 1/200, f9, ISO 100. This was down in a little ditch per se, so the wind was not that negatively impacting the plants. I was just more worried about Charlie coming over and rolling over my subject like he did in the prior video. So I took the pictures first, video second in this case. So I call this the mystery dumpster. Uh, Went through a patch of low-lying bushes, came out on the other side, and anticipating trying to find some flowers, and I run into this, and I stop, and I look around. There is no road, there is no trail, there is nothing. And I'm just staring at this dumpster and staring at it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a picture of it. Why? Because it's unique and different. How did a dumpster get out here, let alone this log with the top in there like that? And there's no trails. Once again, there's how did this thing get out here? I got no idea. It's been out here for a while. There's a lot of rust on it, but it was very colorful and unique and something different that I just wandered upon out there in the field. So this prickly pear cactus, pretty unique. And this was a handheld shot. No, I did. I had to turn my backpack camera bag sideways, put the tripod on top of that in order to get the elevation and got it all lined up. And so once I got it all lined up, I did do a focus stack on this. And you can see the spider on the left-hand side right there at 9 o'clock. And that is the exact same spider that's right there in the center, in the middle of our hands, heading north towards 12 o'clock. But when I focus stacked, and then I put these inside of Photoshop to put them together, just the spider on the left and the spider in the center were present, even though you could faintly see the spider moving from left to right. Photoshop only kept these two, so I just thought it was really cute and unique, so I just kept them inside the image instead of removing them. So if you haven't seen the theme so far, other than the purple flower and the false garlic, almost everything out in this field was yellow. And it just, I'm looking around near the end. So this is now at 1:45 p.m. We've been out there since about 6:45. And it's like, okay, what is going on? Why is everything yellow? I don't see any whites. I didn't see any reds. So maybe those have already come and gone, or the animals have come and eaten them. I don't know, but this was the last thing. This lantana, very pretty. I loved how they were all clustered together in this nice cluster and everything else. I shot this at f11, trying to get as much of it in focus. I probably could have gone f13, but I was worried about getting some fuzziness around the edges. So, lovely bride, I and Charlie, we went out on a recon mission. This is south of Kempner, Texas, actually a little further west. And we were out here trying to use the PhotoPills app to figure out where the full moon would be rising. And while it's cloudy on this day, we were hoping, or I was hoping, that in a couple days, the full moon was going to be on the 30th, 31st. And so I wanted to go out there and recon an area for something different for the full moon. And so what was interesting is those two girls that were riding, they actually asked, "You're not photographing us, are you? Or videotaping us?" I said, "No." And not sure if they participated in the rodeo later on we just had here in our town on the 14th of May. But so anyway, so this is what PhotoPills said, where the moon was supposed to be rising on the 1st of May. And here's just some more footage of the girls riding their horses while I was trying to figure out, do I need to be to the left? Do I need to be to the right? Where is PhotoPills going to tell me that the moon's going to be coming up? And while there's nothing great in the background, I just wanted someplace different. And so what I did is I did take a panorama, and this is what I envisioned I would see on the 1st of May. Once again, this is April 26th, and this is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Once again, this was just a recon mission. So I took another prior full moon and superimposed it inside of Photoshop after I created the panorama. This is a 3-frame panorama. So the moon's way too big. But this was what I was envisioning, and in next week's roll of 24, you will see the results that occurred that day. And you can see, so I'm shooting this with the RF 100 2.8 macro because I was out there. Once again, these were just test shots, but they had some really pretty flowers that I took some pictures of. I did not include any of those inside of this reel. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, one of the reasons why Charlie and I went out to Meridian State Park over there by the lake and why we had to make sure we had a campground on the west side was to look back, and on the eastern horizon, we were supposed to be able to see this Comet C slash 2025 R3, and Pan-STARRS. I believe that's the telescope that found this. And this was the last day that it was going to be observable from the northern hemisphere, and I was clouded over. And here was just one of my last attempts at doing some light painting. And what's interesting is, so I have the yellow chem light in one hand on a 8-inch piece of fishing line, and same with the red in the other hand. And at 6:30 in the morning, this trail was dark. But when you're doing a 400-500 second exposure, it captures light that I just really couldn't see with my eyes. And so as you can see, it didn't turn out very good at all. You got a little bit at the beginning, then it kind of meshes out, and then it slowly catches again. But 365 seconds, f11. Once again, this was my first attempt at light painting, and while I'm not going to say that all of them were a success, I think the first one I showed of me walking along the shore with the lantern, I thought that was very successful. And once again, I hope you enjoyed this roll of 24 for the week of 20 to 26 April 2026. Once again, it's eclectic array. We had some nighttime, or actually early morning, light painting using some different techniques. We had the sunrise coming up over the Meridian State Park, the lake. And then we had, of course, the flowers out there in the wilderness area at the wildlife management area. And then we got to look at a little bit of the proposed moonrise images out there just in West Texas, about an hour away near Kempner, Texas. So I hope you enjoyed this roll of 24. If you did, please consider subscribing and hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. And I'll see you all again next Wednesday. Thank you.